Honkai Star Rail tier list. Quick jump to the end, look at your favorite character, and then rage. Just before we get into it, I just want to get you guys here. Now, this is my first iteration of a tier list. Now, this is the format I loved seeing tier lists in, where you break it up and you get more nitty gritty on the characters and where they're at, as opposed to having one basic tier list. But before we get into anything, before you look at anything, leave your comments. This is going to have different formats to look at the tier lists in as well for the different sections of the game and stuff like that. But I have made this tier list. A massive shout out to the guys at Pridewin, to Antilla, and also to Genizad for their help in like adjusting a few of my rankings that I had on characters originally. Really appreciate it. But before we go any further on this is not perfect. No tier list is perfect. It's subjective. I haven't tested absolutely everything to the full extent. I've been doing my best to test everything I have. But the reason I'm saying this is too often there's a tier list and then everyone goes, okay, that is the tier list, like yada, yada, yada. I'm putting this one out here more so to get more people involved to help me with testing so that I can fine tune this to bring the best information. I am not the best player. I do not expect myself to be the best player. I suck. I understand that. But I also enjoy making these types of things. So if you want to contribute, if you've been playing the beta and you want to contribute to this or just talk about the game, my Discord is in this. It will also be in the description of this video and probably the pinned comment as well. You can join my Discord, and in the Honkai Star Rail section, we do have a section there for tier list discussion. So if you have any testing, ideally analytical testing, I've been testing my characters at level 60. I'm going to get to level 70 on my characters tomorrow to do some more testing as well. Please let me know. The other thing is I want to go through the basics of this tier list, but just to recap that as well. I'm not saying this is 100% right. I still make changes to this every day when I look at it because I'm like, maybe we can adjust that a bit. But I just wanted to get that out of the way because too often people are too just definite on tier lists, and it's like, I just want to let you guys know that this is just an early iteration. I'll probably update this by the time the global release comes out. And disclaimers, this is based on 0 Eidolon for the characters. Some characters I think you'll get crazy, like way better with Eidolons. For instance, like Sampo at E4, I think he's going to be ridiculous. But this is also based on the early game stages that we have at the moment. Now, we don't know what the full end game content's going to look like. We have separated it into different things. Campaign being, early game, you don't have great gear. You're doing a bit of everything. So, that's what campaign is. That's that one. Bosses is more focusing on single target. I probably should put in brackets single target because even though some bosses do spawn ads, a lot of boss fights is going to be, you smack the ads really quick and then it's just 1v1 with the boss. Then we have farming AoE. To be honest, I only put this in here so that the AoE units could get a good ranking in something. AoE at the moment with the modes we have in the game doesn't seem very prioritized. However, when I look at the Memory of Chaos, which is like the Abyss from Genshin, I feel like maybe depending on how they do the bosses there, if they make them more AoE based fights, we could have more use, because in those stages as well, you do need to wipe them quick. Maybe that will be something that we get added later, but I haven't even completed the first wave of that. So, that'll be added later. But basically AoE farming, I put in here as something just to make AoE units have a good ranking in something, because like I said, the usefulness of AoE just doesn't feel there in the game at the moment. And then we have Simulated Universe. Now, Simulated Universe has different buffs in it that can impact characters in different ways. For instance, if we look down here at Japad, he gets a really big buff in this because he has really chunky shields, and shields have so many benefits in the Simulated Universe. You can even get like an R, an ultimate ability that you unlock through the way, where it's like it deals damage to the enemies based on all the shield values on all of your characters, which means he can do lots of damage on top of having a lot of protection as well. You can also get crit rate for shielded characters, energy regeneration. There's a bunch of stuff. So that is that one. Then I have notes for every character. I just go through a brief description of why they are what they are and, how I feel about them and stuff like that. And then I have key Eidolons. Now, I did rank these characters based off of 0 Eidolon, but I want to put some in here that, like, some characters get, like, a really distinctive change on some Eidolons. If there's nothing written here, it doesn't mean they're bad. It was just like for Bronya, like, I would have written every Eidolon because she has them all. They're all fantastic. Same with something like Wealth. They're all fantastic. But for some characters that have one that sticks out, for instance, Arlen here gets a cheat death at 4 Eidolon. That's why I put that there, because that can change the function of the way he plays. anyways. So, you know, take this one with a grain of salt. It was like, do I put more in? Do I put less in? It is what it is. But then if you also want to look at the tabs along the bottom here, this is probably easier if I could put it at 75%. This is all just in a Google Doc. And you want to visualize it, then I've got all the different tier lists here for the different things. Whoops, I kind of messed that one up. So let's put a line at the top there. I'm not very experienced at this stuff, so, you know, take it, go easy on me. But like, that is your bosses. That's going to be farming, and that's going to be simulated universe. So you can have a look at them like this. Now, the reason I've used the S+, S, S-, A+, the plus-minus system is because I like it just to differentiate characters a bit more. If I feel like, you know, these are both S tier characters, but for this purpose, I think this one's just a bit better, but not like a full tier to go into like a god tier type category. I just like using the pluses to be able to separate characters a little bit more in their tiers. It just means it's not like a massive difference, but it's enough of a difference that I just wanted to bump them up to show that in some way. So that's why we've gone with the plus minus type system. So what I think I might do is I might go through every character and just give you guys a quick roundup of the reasoning behind it. I'm going to try and be not too long, but at least this will give you a good general idea of the characters that we have in the game at launch. Also, the new dude, can't remember his name, with the lightning lord, the big god thing that does, it looks absolutely sick, the AoE lightning guy. He's not in here because I haven't had any chance to test him. None of the people I know have pulled him yet, so, you know, keep that in mind. So let's jump into it. Arlen, this is going to be in alphabetical order. Arlen, basically, he sacrifices his own health, and whilst that's cool and all, and he gets a little bit more damage, especially in campaign and early stages and boss fights and stuff like that, you know, especially if you're pushing a deficit, you feel squishy anyway, and sacrificing your HP on your main DPS is just not a great thing, because then it just becomes harder to keep them alive. At 4 Eidolon, he gets a cheat death, so he might get better then. Also, I feel like as you get better gear, once we get into proper gear sets, endgame farming, he could get better, but in this early stage, he's just kind of meh. Asta, she's got a few things. She's got a team-wide attack buff, team-wide speed buff, team-wide fire damage buff, and she's got the multi-hit on her skill, which if you're fighting a single boss and the boss is fire, you're gonna get the most toughness shred out of this. These multi-target attacks are the best for shredding a single boss if they all land on the same target. So she's just an all-round great support, you know, just across the board. Now, if you pull... And this is going to be a theme along the way. If you pull a really good DPS 5-star at the start of your battle, like a Zila or the other dude that I can't remember his name, or a Welt or something like that, then more of these offensive characters are going to be very beneficial. But if you don't get the best DPS and you're using something like a Dan Hung, even though he's really good, you know, you're going to have a brighter light on some of the defensive type characters. So keep that in mind. Bailu, basically... The way I look at Bailu, she's S tier at the moment. I think once we get more healers in the game, she's definitely going to drop right down. I believe, like, personally, my thoughts is going to be, depending on how they implement new healers, is that she will be a tech usage just for the revive. Against bosses that have like a big single target nuke. That's where I think she will fall to eventually. If we start getting healers that also have buffing capabilities and stuff like that, I think they're just going to outshine in general performance. But at the moment, we've only got 2 healers in the game. Bailu's the best one at the moment. So, you know, she gets that high ranking just because a lot of the time you're going to need a healer. Now, Bronya, as you can see, I was trying not to put her as S+, but the guys at Pridewind are like, listen, she probably just is. I didn't want to do it, but, you know, we've gone triple S+. The thing about Bronya is she adds so much offensive pressure, and especially in these early stages of the game, you know, once you start getting gear, you got one good gear set at max, like early on, and she just doubles down on that one good gear set that you built for a DPS unit because she just gives them extra turns. Now, she's not only offensive either. The fantastic thing is, because her skill grants full turn gauge to an ally, so it just gives them the next turn. The thing about this is it means she can be used defensively as well to buff one of your defensive units or your healer, so that you can use that as a defensive ability on top of using it as an offensive ability. Plus, she has just the general buffs. You know, once we get into her Eidolons, she just becomes absolutely cracked as well. She gets a revenge. She has guaranteed crits. Like, she becomes nuts. But in general, she's really cool. And, you know, you just, as your gear gets better, she's just going to keep getting better. You stack more crit damage on her. It means she gives the allies more crit damage. And she's just crazy. I love Bronya. She just looks wicked as well. Then we move on to Clara. Now, Clara is one for me that I am I really need to test Clara more, and I think she could definitely go up in ranks as more content comes in the game and as we get better gear sets and as we test more team compositions and stuff like that. But at the moment, I feel like that A+ generally is a good place for her to sit. Just because if we look in campaign, she provides tankiness and she also provides damage, and she also provides the revenge, which also breaks enemies more often. And in early campaign, a lot of enemies are weak to physical because they give you the physical trailblazer. I feel like it's a thing they're trying to do in that early stage of the game. So she's really handy for that. Bosses, same thing. She provides like mitigation because she gets the aggro and stuff like that. And she has like the damage mitigation for herself, and then she also, it's just the same reason, I'm just repeating myself, and then pretty much the same for Simulated Universe. I think she's just a solid unit. I think she could go up to S tier eventually, but I haven't pulled her, I haven't tested her, so that's more of a theory based one. I just think she looks absolutely wicked. Then we go into Dan. Now Dan is someone I have tested thoroughly, and when we look at 4-star main DPS, if you don't pull any of the 5 stars, I think the best options are going to be between Dan Heng and Su Shang, and I've basically rated these guys very, very pretty much the same, except for in farming. Su Shang's better than Dan in farming. And I'll go through her in a minute. But basically, he's just a really solid DPS. I've done some testing with these guys at level 60 with a decent gear set, both at like level 6 traces. And Dan actually has more damage on his abilities than her, but she can get multiple attacks in a row. So I think she's going to end up having a bit higher damage output, but Dan also brings a slow for the enemy, which gives your whole team turn advantage. They both have their own speed buffs as well, but Dan bringing that slow is what makes him good, and her having the extra damage, I think, is what's going to make her good. But just a really good damage dealer in general, for just across the board for a free-to-play unit. Just really solid. Then we get into Jeopard. Now, Jeopard, if you have him on Eidolon 1 or 2, I think he gets a lot better in like campaign boss fights and stuff like that. The problem is his activation rate on his skill for the freeze is about like, I think it's like 65% or something like that. At Eidolon 1, it goes up to I believe it's 100%. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit out on numbers. But at Eidolon 1, when he gets that more reliable freeze, he just becomes better, because when he's not at that low activation rate, you kind of don't want to use his freeze. And when you're not using his skill, you're generating less energy for him, which means you're also getting to his ult slower. So I feel like he's one of those ones where once you get Eidolon 1 and then Eidolon 2, where he then has a slow as well, he just gets so much better. But at base 0 Eidolon, he's still solid, but it's hard to justify using his skill. It's 2 RNG based with the freeze, and that's sort of the issue you run into him. If he at base had 100% freeze rate, he would be up into like S- tier, I think. But at the moment, that's where he's farming, because obviously he's no AoE damage, nothing like that. And then, like I mentioned earlier, he goes into S for the Simulated Universe because he's got the shields, and shields are just so effective in there if you pick the right path. Herda, basically S for farming. She's a crazy farmer. Everything's AoE. Drop an enemy below 50%. She spins. If she then drops another one, she spins. It's crazy. But like I said, basically the problem with AoE units is there's nothing really that they shine in. They don't really shine in campaign because you're always going to want some single target damage. Against single target bosses, they don't really shine because, you can't, like, there's no point to spreading damage when you got one enemy. So that's where she falls. Himiko, very, very similar. Himiko, basically, she's got better multipliers, so she's okay. Like, she's better in campaign. I like her. She's okay in bosses if she's your 5-star, but in general, and she obviously gets better in Simulated Universe because you have different mechanics that you can use. There's a lot of follow-up attack things that apply as well. With Himiko's multipliers, and she prioritizes damage on 1. Basically, she's a bit better, but she still falls into that problem of being an AoE damage dealer where the game, from what we've seen so far, doesn't really have a section where that is something that can shine. And because she relies on breaking enemies, you need that more. You need more enemies to get broken, and it's just the way she works. But I honestly think eventually they'll introduce something that makes AoE more more enticing, let's say. So as we move on to Hook, basically Hook's going to be like your best free-to-play fire damage dealer if you need fire damage. She's pretty good. I always thought Hook was a dude, but it's a chick. It's like just really solid. Basically, I look at this as the fire version of the physical Trailblazer, but it's got a bit better multipliers, and you've got the dot. And like I said, its main focus is on the primary target. You get adjacent target damage. But yeah, just all around good fire damage unit if you need a fire damage unit is essentially what Hook becomes. Then we go on to March 7th. March 7th in campaign, especially early campaign, is fantastic. That's why she gets the A+. I think most people will end up using her. Maybe some people sub her out when you get the Fire Trailblazer, but in general, she's just really good. The thing I love about her is that her shields are targetable, and they also provide that taunt, so you can work with different synergies. You can work in a synergy with something like Clara. It's just a really solid thing all around. And then even in bosses, when you need when you need the defensive option, it's fantastic. It's a super chunky shield. On top of that, she does do the revenge hits, which means she adds extra braking capacity if the enemy is ice. So, extra braking capacity on top of just chunky shields. Plus, don't forget the AoE freeze, if you can get that to apply. It's a low activation rate, but it is AoE, so you'll take it when you can get it. Just makes March 7th incredibly, incredibly solid. Natasha, we put her A+, basically, same idea as Bailu. I feel like she's going to drop down severely once we get new healers into the game that have other stuff, but because she's the only other healer we have besides Bailu, and normally you're going to find yourself needing a healer in most forms of content, she gets that rating. But honestly, I expect her to drop down to like a B, C, like over the duration of the game. I expect her to severely drop. Also, she does have a cleanse in one of her traces, which is not too bad, which I forgot to mention on March 7th. She also has a cleanse, which is really, really helpful, especially, if you get these two as a free-to-play player with a cleanse, then you can cleanse each other. If one of them gets CC'd, get the other one's effect. It's really quite a solid loop. So that is that one. Next up, Pella. Pella is like the only defense shred in the game. Now, like I mentioned earlier, if you get one of those really strong 5-star DPS, you'll probably be able to get more use in this phase of the game out of Pella than people who don't pull them, just because the offensive pressure becomes better. Now, that's the reason she's sort of in the lower ranks, because often in this early phase, if you don't have the godly units, you're going to be looking at more defensive options, and she's more of like a hyper offensive option. So keep that in mind. Also, I put this note here because I haven't been able to test it or see what it does, but at Eidolon 4, she increases her team's toughness damage, which, as I understand it, I'd say that means that she's going to increase the amount of the toughness bar that you reduce when you attack with the advantageous element, which I think that's going to be an amazing effect in the later game. But like, once again, I base this off no Eidolons, and like I said, if you don't have those hyper offensive units, I feel like she's not going to be used in this early stage at the moment. Then we go to Quinn. I'm going to call her Quinn from now on. That'll do me. Sorry, I suck at names. But she's just, the RNG is frustrating with her. I think her Eidolons make her a bit more reliable, but in general, I just didn't find her great. The only advantage that she has is, one, she is AoE, but like, she is the only other quantum unit that you're going to get as free to play unless you pull Zilla at the moment. So, if you get stuck into the point where there's a boss that's like quantum and imaginary weak, and you like don't have, anything else, maybe you take her, but in general, I'm just not a massive fan. She's just, the RNG doesn't feel great to me. I think once you get a max Eidolon, like I said, it could be a bit more fun, but that's where she's going to sit. Then we get into Sampo. So Sampo is one I can definitely see me ranking him up to S rank in bosses at 4 Eidolon. But at base, he's kind of like Asta, where he has that multi-hit random targets. So if you've got a wind boss, he's just going to hit that one target, and he's just going to like just shred that toughness bar. On top of that, he does apply the wind shear dot as well. His ultimate is AoE, and that's also going to apply an effect to enemies that increases all dot damage they take by 20%, which, as we get more prominent dot damage dealers and we get more 5-star dot damage dealers, that's going to make him so much better. So I think Sampo is one that's going to get better with time. And like I said, with his 4 Eidolon, what happens is, if an enemy is at max stacks of wind shear, he's then going to deal fixed damage every time he hits them. And keeping in mind, his skill is a multi-hit attack, so he's going to be doing like 10% of the dot damage available each time one of that attack hits. So against a boss, not only is he going to apply those dots, he's going to actually, and not just shred the toughness, he's also going to deal some really good just upfront damage. So I just think Sampo is going to be an absolute beast. I really hope I get a bunch of dupes of him when the game launches, because I really do like Sampo. He's just a cool character. Then we go into Zilla. Now, people always get mad at me for saying Zilla. That's the way they say it in the campaign of the game when you listen to it. So that's what I'm sticking with. I apologize if that triggers anyone. If they change the voice acting, I will change it, I promise. But S plus for campaign. Campaign, early days, you know, you do have a lot of ads that you got to kill. She just makes campaign easy mode, essentially is what she is. Then in bosses, I put her at an S minus. She does have massive single target damage, but a lot of bosses don't keep spawning those ads. So it takes a whole element out of her kit. She still has massive multipliers and can still do huge damage. Plus she's like the only good quantum damage dealer that we have in the game for bosses. So like she's still really solid, but when you lose a whole element to your kit because the boss doesn't summon enough ads, it sort of like limits your usage a little bit in that sense. Then for farming, she's S because, you know, just kill a unit, kill another unit, let someone else take a turn, away you go. And then S plus over here, the damage buffs you can get on a unit that just has solid damage already, she can just deal insane amounts of damage over there. So in general, I think she's going to be just a solid unit all round. Everyone's going to pull for her. I feel like she could be power crept a little bit, but in general, she's a pretty cool unit. Plus, she's got a scythe, you know. Then we go into Serval. I wanted to rate Serval a bit higher. I left her here. I think she can get better with time. She's a solid option. The problem with Serval is we already know we're getting the lion dude in the game. There's just... I feel like AoE lightning, if she wasn't an AoE lightning, maybe she'd be better, but you know, I feel like the lightning is going to get power crept pretty quick. I believe Kafka is as well when she comes out. But you know, as a free-to-play option, I used her as one of my my 5th unit that I built. So you know, when Dan wasn't useful for me or I wanted to bring double DPS, she's the one I get. And I feel like a lot of free-to-play players will end up building Serval because she is good for that AoE option, but also she's got a really sick synergy with what's her name? With Herta, where because she deals more damage to the first target, she can drop the first target low with her skill, which is going to make her to spin. Then she does lower damage to the other two, then make her to spin again. She's got the solid AoE, the dot damage can tick. I think she's got a really good synergy with Herta, provided they eventually get a reason to be used outside of just farming. So that is that one. Su Shang, I mentioned her before when I was talking about... old mate Dan Hung, and basically there, like I said, I feel like she's got a bit more damage than Dan, but Dan has the support as well. When we look on raw numbers for skills and ultimates, Dan actually outshines with the same set of gear, the same whatchamacallit light cone when I've been testing them. But because she can, if she uses her skill that brings her to full energy, you can instantly proc her ult, and then she'll use her ult and grant herself another turn, meaning that she can use her skill again. And if enemies are broken, she gets more speed. She's more guaranteed to proc her follow-up attack. I don't know if it's considered a follow-up attack, but her extra damage as well. So, you know, she's just all around a great free-to-play damage dealer. If you pull her, she's not free to play as in you don't get her for free, but she's a 4-star, so she's easier to get than the 5 stars, if that makes sense. So if you do pull her, really solid damage option. And if the enemy's weak to physical, just bring her because she's great. Ting Yun. Now, Ting Yun's kind of like a budget, like wanting to be a budget Bronya. The problem with her is that when the way she advances turn gauge on your allies is through her ultimate, which is nowhere near as reliable as doing it from the skill. So she's only going to work in those hyper offensive teams. So if you pull, like I said, Azila or something, you could get some use out of her. But if you're playing more defensive because you don't have the units, she's not going to shine as much. And like I said, she loses that ability to be a defensive option that Bronya has, purely because Bronya can just buff a defensive unit with her skill anytime you want. As soon as she gets a turn, buff that unit, then you get some defensive, defensive measures in place. Whereas Ting Yun doesn't have that option because it's tied to her ultimate, so she's a bit more situational in my opinion. That's where she sort of falls. Then we've got Physical Trailblazer. Honestly, decent physical unit. In the early game, in campaign, a lot of the enemies are weak to physical. It's like they tried to tee that up. And then once you get the Fire Trailblazer, a lot of enemies seem to be weak to fire. So, you know, really solid in early campaign, but in general across the board, not a great crazy unit, especially when you've got Su Shang as a physical option for, you know, a lot of players should get her. So she becomes like the better option. And often once you unlock the Fire Trailblazer, a lot of people will probably be using the Fire form anyway. And who knows what other forms we'll get in the future of the game as well. So once we jump into that Fire one in the campaign, it's great. You get the shields. You know, you've got a taunt. You've got a team mitigation. There's just a lot to the kit. Plus, you have some AoE for breaking, and you can cut in front of enemies whenever you want. Say multiple enemies are attacking in a row. You get this guy to, or girl, whatever you want to play as, to full energy. the enemies do an attack, get rid of your shields. You can cut in with that ultimate, reapply the shields, so you've got mitigation for the next enemy's attack. Really cool play arounds with this character. Just a great supportive character. Farming, not so great just because the damage isn't crazy. And then we go up to an S+ for Simulated Universe because of those shields. So there's, like I mentioned with Jeopard, he gets in there because he can also deal massive damage if you get that one upgrade that deals damage based on shield value. The Trailblazer doesn't want to use that, but there are other effects in the simulation room that, you know, if you have shields, just doesn't even matter what value they are. You gain speed, you gain energy regeneration, you gain crit rate. So just having shields gives so much, and every time this dude takes a turn, you just whole team gets a shield. It's fantastic. On to the last two units. So we have Welt. Now, Welt, in my opinion, I've got him. I haven't leveled him up. I used him in the previous beta. I know changes have happened since then, but when you actually just look at his multipliers and everything, this dude is just cracked. He is the only imaginary damage dealer in the game at the moment, which gives him bonus points as well. But he's got random attack, kind of like Asta, kind of like, who's the other one? My boy Sampo. So if the boss is weak to imaginary and it's only the boss on the field, he's fantastic. He's got 2 ways to apply speed slow. He's got turn gauge reduction for the enemies on an AoE with his ultimate. Like I said, his skill hits random targets. And this dude he's just a really, really good kit. I don't know whether to consider him pure damage or support, but he's kind of like, I've put him in the damage category because he does deal good damage too, but he's also a crazy supportive character with all those slows and turn gauge reductions that he brings to the table. And just at 0 Eidolon, he's just a great unit in my opinion. And if you get any Eidolons for this guy, every one of them is like a cracked upgrade and they all look sick. So definitely keep that in mind. Then we get into Yan. I'm just going to call him Yan. I suck at names once again. This dude to me is like the best single target boss killer in the game. Welt gets to S+ in bosses because of the support he brings. This guy gets there because of the damage. I think you can get this guy up to like 60% crit rate bonus just on himself. And he's just so easy to gear as well. In the early game, it's really hard to get good gear sets, get your crit rates up. And this dude just does it through passives. Like he just deals so much single target damage. It's like, it's ridiculous and so easy to gear. So to me, in campaign, he's not quite as good as Zilla, because Zilla, you know, can kill all the extra ads and stuff like that. But when we look at bossing, he's like the primary damage dealer at the moment for bossing. Farming, okay, just because he can deal such massive single target damage and nuke any one enemy, but he doesn't have the AoE for the cleave teams if you want to do that thing. And then we go S+ over here, because we're like, kind of like Zilla, you can just ramp up the damage these guys can deal, and it just becomes insane. Now, the one kind of caveat to him is that his Eidolon 1 makes him deal extra damage, 100, I think it's like 100% attack, extra damage to frozen enemies, but it breaks the freeze. I don't like that because it's like sort of like, but some situations I might want them to be frozen and I'm not stressed about the extra damage. So it's one of those ones, most situations, it's probably just going to be a straight plus to him. But it's one of those ones that's kind of triggers me because like in some situations maybe it's not the best, but that is him. That is my basic description for every character. I have no idea how long this video has been. I apologize if it's annoying, but I went through it. That's the tier list. That's my summary on all the characters. Like I said, if you want to go look at them, it's easier probably just to browse in this format and you can take a look at, you know, where they fall. And this is looking at this is a lot of where I made the adjustments to my team. I've got to get new images for the Trailblazer. The one in the damage is going to be the physical and the one in the support is going to be the fire. But yeah, this is the best way to look at it, I think, and see any adjustments you guys would recommend to me to make. Once again, jump into the Discord and yeah, just have a look in here and go, I think that unit's actually a bit higher than this one. And that's sort of like what I said. That's why I did the plus minus system, but I'm going to shut up now. That's what I've got. Like I said, this is by no means the perfect tier list. This is just iteration 1, and I want to get it out there so that anyone who wants to contribute can jump over to Discord and help us out. But anyway, guys, that was long as hell. Thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.